Okay, I'm going to do an overview of the Miloslick software. This is for the Mallincam brand. The version I'm using is 2.5.6. So we have some quick tabs up here. Most of us as users use these quick tabs. The first one's for your camera settings, and there's a scroll bar here that takes you all the way down for all your different settings. The video mode is basically used for your shutter speeds for exposure, for planetary and or for the moon, so basically really bright objects, and you can also control your AGC as well. You can, as a matter of fact, you can actually even turn it off. So the video mode is used for planetary or bright objects such as the moon. The sun would also be a video mode object. There are three objects or three camera exposure settings. The second one would be sense up. So if we move this to sense up, you can actually just move the sensitivity all the way up, and then if you move your AGC up as well, up to like 8, the camera sensitivity now will you'll start to see stars in this field here slowly begin to come in, because we have the camera set to its maximum setting before we do any kind of long-term exposure, which is what you will have once you go to your hyper mode. So you can start to see the stars are starting to twinkle in there as it's starting to get more and more sensitive. They're going to come in brighter and brighter. If you really need to give it some gas, what you're going to need to do then is you're going to need to go to hyper mode, and that's what you're going to use for like your really deep space objects, things that are really going to need some long exposure time to gather the photons to display them. So I'm currently set on the Trifid nebula. You don't see it currently because it's set in sense up mode. It doesn't have enough sensitivity in order to pull it in, but we're going to go ahead and do that now. Now on your AGC, you can adjust these for if you have full moon. Generally speaking, I go with 3 if there's the moon is relatively full, or if the object you're trying to get is pretty close to the moon, and then I'll go with 4 for like so obviously the higher you go, the more sensitive you're going to get. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to 4, and we're going to go ahead and set this to hyper mode. And when you do that, you'll notice up here it's going to have a little wait time. You have to wait 3 minutes for that to I'm not really quite sure why it makes you wait to 3 minutes. There is a little X here that you can click to turn that off. But obviously the Mallincams are pretty expensive, so I generally just go ahead and wait to 3 minutes each time. All right, so let's go ahead and while that's counting down, because you do have to wait that 3-minute countdown before we can start integration. Let's go ahead and scroll down, just to have a touch on a few other things. You have the white balance. You can either do one push. You can have auto, 3200, 5600, or manual. You move down, you have gamma, and this is set for what type of CRT or LCD screen you're using. I generally use LCD on the computer monitors that I'm using here. Your advanced pixel control. So if you're going to do something like the craters of the moon, you want to get those, tighten those pixels up. You can set that. Usually I'll set that on 12. And then on deep space objects, I might go with 2, or just take it right down the center at 8. Your highlight chronograph, you have an adjustment for that here. You have a mask for video crosshairs, which is kind of nice. And then you have camera output for, you have color bars. You can flip vertical or horizontal. You do have zoom, a digital zoom as well. You would click that and then run your slider. And then at the very bottom, Mallincam, I'm using the Mallincam Extreme tonight, and that is a cooled, so I do have the cooling on. Even though it's rather cool outside, I generally leave the cooling on. Okay, so that we still have about 1 minute and 13 seconds before we can integrate. We're going to go ahead and take to tab 2. Now this is your digital video digitizer settings, and you can set this now for your brightness, your contrast, your hue, your saturation, sharpness, gamma, white balance, and gain. And then at the very bottom down here, you do have a maximum capture rate. If you'd like to set that, you definitely have the option to do that. The next tab would be your high-speed stacking. What's nice about Miloslick is it does give you stacking options. You can either do a high speed, and you can go up to 4 frames if you'd like, or you can just do normal frame stacking, and you can enable that. You can either do a rolling average, a rhythmic sum, or a high dynamic range average as well. Generally, I like to go with the rolling average, and then of course the number of frames, you can go up to 20 frames. Okay, and then another nice feature is your high dynamic range average. The nice thing about that is that you can do a quarter stop, 1/2 stop. What this basically does is that it gives you a range in your dynamic. So it might take one exposure at, say, 3 seconds, the next exposure at 7, the next exposure, and that's all based upon what type of multiplier you're using here. So if you're going to do, say, 3, then the next one will be at 7, the next one after that will be 11. Depending on how many frames you want to go with, it can go up, and it gives you then a total sum of average exposures, and they stack all that together for you automatically, which is very nice. So that's really nice when you're using let's say M42 and you're blowing out the center, and you want that to be tamed just a little bit. Definitely using that high dynamic range average is really a nice way to stack your photos. Okay, we have stopped our countdown and we are ready to integrate. I want to go ahead and just touch on these other tabs. You have dark frame corrections, which is really really nice to have that built in. And then you have amp glow removal. You also have vignetting reduction, and you also have hot pixel removal. Okay, so those are it's pretty intuitive. It's really nice features that they built into this software. And then as we move to the next one, we do have a nice histogram that you have low, medium, and your highs. So that's definitely, and this is much improved over the one they used to have. And then of course you have some miscellaneous. You have grayscaling, you have invert image, warp sharp, mean removal, edge detect, and digital smoothing. And then of course over here you also have your average, weighted average, photometric, and then digital in NTSC and PAL. Okay, and then lastly you have video overlay, so you can enable it to do crosshairs. So when you're doing your alignment, that's really nice to have. They have a couple of different ones that you can choose if you'd like. And of course you have text overlays, so if you want to enable that, you can actually have your timestamp. You can display your camera information, your exposure settings. So when you're broadcasting, say on Night Skies Network, you can actually give them all this different information. So that way they know, in the conditions that you're in, what you're doing. So what kind of camera you're using, your exposure, what that's set at, and what your AGC is set at. And then of course if you went to live, it gives them also information whether you're integrating and stacking. So since I'm not currently integrating and not stacking, it's giving that information out, which is really nice. Okay, and then at the very, very bottom down here, say if you wanted to do, say, M42, you would just type in M42, and that even gives them the object, and that would be displayed as well. Okay. All right, so that's kind of a really brief overview of the tabs that we generally go to, the quick tabs. There are other settings up here just for your information. You can also set for like what type of Mallincam you have. This does work for the Mallincam Junior, the Pro PC, the Hyper Plus, the VSS, and VSS Plus, the Extreme, and they actually have the newest Mallincam out. It does have support for the Exterminator. Okay, and we'll click that off. And then up here we do have some the bars. A lot of these kind of mirror, if you will, the quick tabs that we just went over for camera settings and so forth. You can increase your exposure or decrease your exposure. You can send or get settings from your Mallincam. And when you go to turn your Mallincam off, or I should say at the end of your viewing session, you want to park your Mallincam, because that allows it to basically tone down, I suppose, prior to unplugging the camera. There is really no on or off switch on the camera. It's just you plug the power in, you unplug the power. So you really want to go and park your Mallincam prior and let it will get a little warning will come up and says you need to give it at least 3 minutes before you unplug it. Okay, and then of course you can always reset your Mallincam to factory defaults. Your video tab or your video menu has pause video. Video device is going to be all of your devices. So if you want to pull in different cameras, some work on the video display. It may not give you all of the all of the features may not work depending on what kind of camera you have, but some may. But this gives you the opportunity to grab different video capture, different cameras, things of that nature. Your video input, the Mallincam does have video composite as well as S-video. I am using S-video. Your video capture sizes, actually that's grayed out. And then you have source details that you can show, and then you do have video scaling as well. And of course then your window is either minimized, maximized, so forth and so on. So that's pretty much an overview. You do have zoom, a quick zoom button here that you can zoom in and out, and of course you can actually turn your for orientation if you'd like, and then you can flip horizontally or vertically. Then I'll just hit the reset button there, and that takes me right back where I was. Okay, so that pretty much does it for that. Let me go ahead and hit the integration button. Now I'm currently set at 7 seconds, and I'm set at AGC4. There is a full moon tonight. As a matter of fact, we're going to. It's about 3:30 in the morning, and the reason that I'm up is because we do have a lunar eclipse happening. Today is, I believe, April the 4th of 2015. So I'm going to be broadcasting that on Night Skies Network. So I thought I'd do this while I have the night sky tonight to go ahead and just give an idea of how Miloslick works. So let me go ahead and hit the integration button here. We're currently set at 7 seconds. As a matter of fact, let me just go with 3 seconds to give you an idea of what I get. And we'll go ahead and push that now. And we're integrating, and you can see that it was integrating 1, 2, 3 of 3. So I'm getting a good star field coming in, and I can just slowly increase this. I'll go to 4 seconds, and then it gets a little more. Let's take this up to 5. Now you can see at 5 we're just starting to get the outline of the trifid. Let me go to 6 seconds. Okay, and every time it constantly repeats. It just repeats and it will refresh. So let's take this up to about 9 seconds. And of course we have it popped in pretty well, so we can take that back down to about 7. Okay, so at 7 you're starting to see some pretty good outline of it. So now let's go ahead and take it while that's integrating. Now at 7 seconds, let's go ahead and click on our video digitize your settings, and we can adjust our brightness and let's see, if I wanted to take this down a little bit, now it disappears, or I can take the brightness up. So let me just do a little adjustments here. And then of course our contrast, don't want to get it too dark. Okay, so let's get it right about there, and the reason I'm going to set it a little darker is because I'm going to go ahead and do some stacking, and that's going to lighten it up quite a bit. So let's go to our stacking, and let's just do with frame stacking. Let's do a rolling average at 2 frames. So let's go ahead and click that now, and then right up here you're going to see frames 1 of 2 and then 2 of 2. So our first refresh just went. Now it's working on the second stack, and we'll see what we get. Okay, so we probably need to go with a little bit more. So let's go ahead and take this up to 4 frames. And now it's going to reset up here, so it's frame 0 of 4. And it will go 1 of 4, 2 of 4, and so forth. Okay, it looks like I'm going to probably need to lighten that up a little bit. Now, when it's stacking, you can make adjustments here. So let's bring that up a little. Okay, and let's bring, now see as each time it stacks, I want to bring that down a little bit because I don't want to get too bright. So with every refresh, it gets just a little more. Let's get that contrast down. There we go. When you're stacking, it won't make the adjustment until after the refresh. So if I was to turn my stacking off here, then you can make it's immediate. So if I go here and I want to bring up my contrast or down, it does it almost immediately. So let's go ahead now and go back to our stacking. Enable rolling average 4 frames. So that's frame 1. Here comes frame 2. I might have got that just a little bit too dark. Okay. Let's try that again. Let's turn off my stacking for now. Let's bring that back in. Yeah, I got my brightness too low. So let's do this. And if you don't want to do the slider, you can just do over here these fine adjustments here. Sometimes it just helps because you don't slide it too far. Let's go back to our stacking now, and let's do a weighted rolling average of 4 frames. So you just have to really kind of play with it. You can see it's kind of getting a little better there. A little better. And that's really kind of the fun, I think, of video astronomy or any kind of astrophotography. So you can see with every refresh now, it's getting better and better. So now that I've kind of got that adjusted, now it gets kind of great because I can go here and I can just take this up to 6 frames. Now it's going to start over again, but it should give me a better and better and better picture with each refresh. So if you watch the countdown up here, now we have 2 of 7 seconds. This is the second frame. Now we're going to the third. By the way, I'm not guiding this evening. So if you go too far, your stars, if I'm not guiding anyway, which I'm not, my stars are going to get lose the pinpoint. Okay, so there's number 6. And again, it just really comes down to making some adjustments as you go along. Let's bring that brightness up just a little more. And of course my saturation, if you wanted a little bit more color, you can actually add that in as well. Bring that up just a little more. Okay. Now it's getting a little better. And I'm not sure how this actually comes out on the software that I'm capturing this with, though, as opposed to my live window. You would think it would be the same, but perhaps not. But this is a pretty faint nebula, and things like Orion just really pop. And unfortunately, Orion was below the horizon this evening. It's already passed over, so I wasn't able to do that for you. So now you can see I'm starting to bring out, even though you get a little vignetting here, I'm starting to bring out a lot more of the nebulosity. And of course, I have a small dust bunny here. I apologize for that. But it's starting to bring out more nebulosity in this star field. It's really starting to pop now. And if I was to go here and say, bring up my saturation a little more, I can maybe get a little bit more of that to shine. Okay. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Not bad. I've had better, but it doesn't look bad at all. So that hopefully gives a good outline of how to use Miloslick. And there's guys that if you look at Night Skies Network, most of us do use Miloslick, and it's always great to get on there and ask questions and to learn, because I'm certainly not the best at it. I don't profess to be, but we're all on a learning curve, and so it's a great program. So anyway, I hope that helps everyone, and I thank you very much.